Hey there, I'm Ari from the Tech Buyers Guru, and in this video I'll be talking about a topic that's near and dear to my heart, specifically do-it-yourself PC building and the state of the component market right now as we're heading into the final stretches of 2021. Now, it goes without saying, it's been a pretty challenging year for PC builders. And in fact, if you're familiar with my channel dating back to 2019 and 2020, you know that I regularly published videos that showed you how to assemble PCs and also gave you guides based on price points like $1,500 or $2,000, as well as types like content creation, small office, gaming, or mini ITX. I decided in December 2020 that I was going to put those videos on hold. I wasn't going to publish anymore until the market normalized because I frankly felt bad recommending components that you couldn't buy. So I thought things would normalize in spring 2021. Well, that came and went. And then summer 2021, I thought, okay, finally we'll get GPUs in stock. There was a brief glimmer of hope, and then things fizzled again. And it's looking like it's going to be a really long time before the GPU market normalizes. Frankly, you may not want to hear this, but I don't think prices will come down to what we all would like them to be until the end of 2022. And I do mean that. I don't mean 2021. I mean 2022, because that's when the first next-gen GPUs are going to hit RDNA 3 from AMD. That will be followed shortly by the Ada Lovelace GPUs from NVIDIA in early 2023. But with the current generation of GPUs, MSRPs are a fiction. There's no reason to think those will return ever in this generation of GPUs. And I think that in late 2022, what we'll see is that AMD and NVIDIA will reset the price performance curve back to where it was in late 2020. So whatever comes out in late 2022 will more or less offer the same price performance of the RTX 3080 that I got in late 2020. Now, this was something I had to wait 8 weeks for. I got it direct from EVGA. I signed up for the wait list the day it launched, and that was before cryptocurrency became mainstream again in late 2020. So it was a crazy year before cryptocurrency. It got so much crazier. It's not going to be any less crazy for a very long time. But the RTX 3080 and other GPUs that launched alongside it actually offered tremendous price performance, as I detailed in my video card rankings video that I published a few months ago. I'll link that up right over here. You can check that out. You can hear my arguments then about why those GPUs were really priced too low. And yes, there is such a thing as too low a price for a product, because what it led to was just crazy competition, consumers camping out in front of stores, and non-availability. And then, of course, scalpers. Before cryptocurrency, again, these cards were being scalped before anyone was mining on them. So it was just a mess. And I think that in 2022 and early 2023, we'll see cards again that offer the same price performance, and people will be happy. They will probably have forgotten that you could have gotten a similar card in 2020 if you waited on a wait list for 8 weeks or you camped outside of Best Buy for 12 hours. All right, you see why those really weren't valid retail prices? All right, so enough said on GPUs. You can actually get some GPUs from the major retailers. Amazon and Newegg in the US actually sell the RX 6700 XT for around $900 and the RX 6900 XT for around $1,800. And these are not scalper prices. These are Amazon and Newegg selling directly, sold by these companies. And you may say, but that's a scalper price. Again, MSRPs that you know of are a fiction. These are the new prices, and Amazon and Newegg are getting in on it. And specifically, Amazon is really strict about MSRPs. Typically, you can't raise them above what the launch price was. But I think they've basically waived that restriction for GPUs because Amazon is happy to sell the RX 6700 XT and 6900 XT for about double MSRP every day of the week. And frankly, I think it's okay. If you want a GPU for your high-end gaming system, these cards, even at $900 and $1,800 respectively, are still okay values. They're offering better price performance than what you could have got in mid-2020. From that point of view, it's progress. I know you don't like the idea of buying something over MSRP, but again, let me drill this into your head. Those MSRPs are fiction. They will not return. So if you're holding your breath, holding out hope of getting this card for $700 for your new gaming PC, you're going to be in for a whole lot of disappointment. And you don't have to be disappointed. Just get a different card for maybe a higher price or maybe a slightly lower performance tier that'll get you into your games. That's my recommendation to you, because again, we're going to be waiting a long time before that price performance curve returns to what we saw in late 2020. Let's move on to CPUs, where things have been actually equally strange. Of course, Zen 3 launched from AMD, and those sold out immediately. They had some supply constraints coming out of TSMC. They don't fab their own, they don't have their own fabs, they don't manufacture their own CPUs. But today, in late summer 2021, you can get most AMD CPUs above $200. So I'm talking about Zen 3 now, the 5600X at $275, the 5800X around $395. The 5900X still sells out at $550, which is its MSRP, but typically doesn't sell for that much over it if you want one. And then the 5950X at $750. Again, that's the MSRP and a decent deal for an incredibly fast 16-core CPU. Strange thing is, if you want a lower end CPU from AMD, you're going to pay way above retail, and I'm going to highly recommend that you not buy those. Things like this Ryzen 5 3600 that once sold for around 160 bucks is typically often near $300 today, which is a complete ripoff. Same thing goes for like their Ryzen 3 3300X, which is often $180. It launched at $130, I believe. Don't touch any AMD CPUs under $200, or sorry, that should be under $200. Basically, anything other than Zen 3 is a waste of money today. Now, Intel should be able to come in and clean up with their mid-range CPUs. This is a 10400, which I highly recommend if you can buy it, but they do have some supply constraints, and it's for a different reason than AMD. Of course, Intel owns its own fabs. It can make pretty much as many CPUs as it wants. But specifically, Rocket Lake, the 11th gen CPUs, vanished soon after launch in late March of 2021. And I think this was all according to Intel's plan. So they launched the 11,400, 11,700, 11,900 to kind of critical panning, specifically on the high end. The 11,400 was actually pretty good, more or less equaled this 10,400 in gaming and was a little bit better in content creation. But my impression is that Intel didn't really intend for these CPUs to be on retail shelves for very long. It was basically a launch meant to satisfy its OEMs, companies like Dell and HP and Lenovo that need to release new products every year, new desktops, new laptops as well, that have new CPUs. And for the most part, they still use Intel. Of course, they are moving over slowly to AMD's great lineup, but it takes a long time for a company like Dell or Lenovo to change over. So they depend on Intel, and Intel delivered with Rocket Lake. A lot of the reviewers out there in the DIY world didn't like Rocket Lake and made fun of it, said it was a total waste of sand. You may know who I'm referring to, but it wasn't a waste of sand if you're an OEM, because things like the 11,700K are actually pretty good in a business PC. They're also decent in a gaming PC, particularly if you're a company like Dell or HP that can get your hands on a GPU like this at a pretty good price and then put together a gaming PC that people really want. So again, Rocket Lake, I don't believe it was meant to go to retail. Yes, if you search around, you might be able to find the 11,700K at retail prices, but everything else is sold out. Specifically that 11,400, I'm pretty confident that was basically an OEM CPU that Intel launched at retail like at launch in March and basically never restocked. So the 11,400 vanished, which is really weird because it was actually the best CPU in the lineup. But anyway, if you want an Intel CPU today, you will have some trouble, but you can get the 10,400 and the 10,600K regularly for well under the prices of the Zen 3 CPUs from AMD, and that's why I really recommend them. Like, you can often get the 10,600K for $225, which is a great deal. Yes, I know it's like a generation old at this point, but if you want to build a mid-range gaming PC, it's a great CPU. So again, you can look to Intel for some of those mid-range and then AMD for the high-end Zen 3. There are rumors that Alder Lake's coming, and it should be coming soon. We'll see how the performance is. It's a very new architecture for Intel. Strangely, Rocket Lake, which was also new architecture, will vanish from history. It will basically become a non-entity. So Alder Lake, of course, is a big little design. It's completely different. It has big cores, little cores. It required basically a new operating system, Windows 11, which is going to be launching probably alongside the Intel Alder Lake designs, the 12th gen CPUs. They're working hand in hand because, of course, Alder Lake wouldn't work very well on Windows 10. I think AMD could probably counterpunch if it wants to, but if it doesn't need to, it won't. And again, Zen 3 is a very good processor if you want that right now. Let's move on to some of the other components though, and this is where some of the good news comes in. Let's talk about power supplies. This is a new model from Corsair, the RM850X. I'll be featuring it in a video soon on the channel. This is an updated 2021 model, and the good news is that these are now in stock at retail prices. For a long time, anything above 850 watts, specifically gold rated or above, were basically sold out worldwide because they were used in cryptocurrency mining. It's still hard to buy 1000 watt and up PSUs, and I'm talking about good ones. I'm not talking about all the junk that flooded the market. I'm talking about high-end quality models, like models from Corsair and their competitors, things like models from EVGA, Seasonic. These were really hard to buy for a long time. I have seen some 1000 watt gold and platinum models. I've seen them sell out and take a while to restock. And here's kind of the backstory on that. I'm hearing from my contacts in the industry. One of the issues is the freight charge. Okay, overseas shipping is really spiraling upward in costs. And while we as consumers don't see that directly, we see it indirectly in prices on products and non-availability products. So if a big heavy box like this, relatively heavy, is not economical to ship via freight overseas, they just will hold off. And I think that's one of the reasons we're seeing some problems with restocking of PSUs that sold out earlier on the cryptocurrency craze. They just can't sell these at retail and make any profit when the freight costs are going up 3 or 4 times above what they were in 2020. That's according to my industry contacts. So that's a big issue for power supplies. It's a really big issue for cases. Cases are, of course, big. They're the biggest component you have in your PC. And frankly, it's going to be really hard to launch new cases at MSRPs that we all would like to see. So I think what you're going to be seeing is either no new case launches from a lot of the major names out there, like Corsair, Thermaltake, Silverstone, NZXT, and the rest. I think they're holding off on a lot of their big case launches because the freight charges will make it hard for them to launch at prices that are competitive. I actually have discussed this with a lot of my viewers. Silverstone has been very honest and upfront with me about a case that I profiled several times on the channel in 2020. That was the Alta F1. It was delayed and then it was finally launched actually this month for about $100 over what they anticipated. And a lot of people said, what a terrible price. It's $300 for a mid-tower. Admittedly, it's a high-end mid-tower, full aluminum case with really innovative cooling, but it's $300. And people are saying, oh, that doesn't compare to the case I bought 5 years ago. That was $150. Freight charges, guys. All right, Silverstone's been really upfront with me about this. They said, we wish we could launch it at the price we initially intended, but freight is killing us. And like I said, I think a lot of their competitors are just holding out. They're just not going to launch new cases because you all will be disappointed in the MSRPs they'd have to charge. Motherboards is another area where you have kind of a larger, heavier product. This X570E Gaming from Asus that I got in 2020 was $300 at the time. It's now $330, and I have seen Asus more or less increase their prices across the board 10% on models that existed in 2020 and new models, like for instance something like the new Rocket Lake based systems, the new motherboards based on the Z590 chipset have been quite a bit more expensive than Z490 based models. So basically every manufacturer out there, Asus, Gigabyte, MSI, tacked on an additional $50 for motherboards that more or less were the same level. So this is an X570E Gaming. There is no newer AMD chipset, but the equivalent Intel board would be quite a bit more than $300. I think it's like $400 for the E-gaming model of the Intel Z590. So, you know, again, I think that actually may have been an opportunity for the motherboard manufacturers to deal with freight charges and kind of hide them in the new MSRP. So there's a lot of things going on behind the scenes. It's not just manufacturers trying to rip you off or paying for new features like new 802.11x networking or new Bluetooth or new USB Type-C. I think freight has a lot to do with it. But let me get to some of the really good news. And that is on the smaller products like RAM and SSDs. Now this crucial kit, a 16 gigabyte kit, a DDR4 3600, is now down to $85, the lowest price I've seen all year. And that is a really good deal for a great kit. Now historically, this probably went down to, I think, around 75, but hey, 85 isn't bad. And I specifically call out 3600 kits because they are really great price performance kit for any system, whether it be Intel or AMD. When you go above 3600, you run into the risk of a non-boot situation, all right? That's true, again, for both AMD and Intel. If you're a tweaker and you want to mess with your frequency and timings, and you are okay with blue screening over and over again until you get your system to boot, go ahead and buy a 4000 kit. Go ahead and buy a 4400 kit. For everyone else, 3600 is going to be the sweet spot. And again, this is now down to 85. That's a great value. It's not the historic low, but it's still a really good value. And same thing with SSDs. Not quite at historic lows. This is the SX8200 Pro from XPG. This 1TB model is now 120. I've seen it as low as 110. But again, you know, 10 bucks over the historic low isn't that bad. And this is in spite of prognostications that these products would skyrocket in price in 2021. That did not come to be true. And that's great news if you're someone who is itching to upgrade and can't find the GPU you want. You can probably get a nice new SSD or a new RAM kit. Maybe you want to double up on RAM. You want to go from 16 to 32 gigabytes. Go ahead and check the price on your existing kit, or maybe get a brand new kit and sell off your old kit, because there are really good prices right now on that sweet spot of RAM, DDR4 3600, and sweet spot with SSDs, 1TB models. You know, 120 for this. You can get a PCI Gen 4 model starting at 160, or the fastest Gen 4 models are just 200 bucks. So really nice upgrade if you've got something like an X570 board or B550 board that can handle Gen 4 SSDs. So those are the great upgrades right now. One last thing I'll mention, I've got a lot of contacts in the cooling industry. You all know that. One of my favorite coolers is the Fuma 2. This was sold out for much of 2020, but Scythe and a lot of the other manufacturers have been able to catch up with demand, potentially because demand is lower now. I mean, that's the sad part of GPUs and to a lesser extent CPUs being hard to find. CPU coolers and fans have not been in quite as much demand. And the good news is if you want to upgrade your CPU cooler or your case fans, you can get some great deals right now. And more importantly, you can get stuff in stock. So brands like Arctic, Noctua, again, Scythe, some of my favorites, Deepcool as well. They're all available most every day, and the prices are very fair. There is going to be a little bit of fluctuation, particularly for liquid coolers. Again, you're dealing with a larger box, a heavier box. I've seen a few all-in-ones launch this year at MSRPs a little bit higher than expected, so it could be the freight charges plus. There is the issue in the US of tariffs, and it's a little hard to track down exactly how tariffs hit some of these products, but they definitely do hit them. So just be aware, manufacturers are not out to get you. You know, I work with a lot of these brands, and I frankly feel that they're in it to give you what you want. And I know there's a lot of videos on YouTube right now talking about this product's a terrible price and this company's ripping you off. And, you know, it's not really about that. I work closely enough with these manufacturers to know that they try to give you fair prices. And if you see something out of stock, or you see something at a price that's higher than you believe is fair, from a first-party seller. I'm not talking about scalpers, because scalper prices have nothing to do with what EVGA or Corsair or Asus wants, okay? They're not the ones doing the scalping. I think that they have to contend with the market just like you do, and they have all sorts of pressures and constraints that they really can't get around. So some of the bigger products out there, the cases, the power supplies, and the larger liquid coolers, I'm seeing those prices inch up. All right, so it kind of seems like I ended on a low note there, but overall, there is good news to be had here, and that is that if you want to upgrade an existing PC with new RAM, a new SSD, a new cooler, or a new power supply, you can do it today. Things are returning to normal in those markets, and if you need a new CPU, you've got a lot of Zen 3 options, and perhaps we're going to see Alder Lake knock it out of the park as well. It's promising. It's new, it's different. Will it be better than Zen 3? Remains to be seen. But at least we have Zen 3, and Zen 3 was just such a fantastic product. It's got legs. It's going to be around for a while. And then GPUs, well, I've told you what to do already. If you need a new GPU, and if you don't need a new GPU, you're lucky, because it's a tough market right now. With all that said, I would appreciate your comments, your feedback, your thoughts on the market, what it's done for you. Have you soured on building PCs? Have you found a new hobby, or have you focused on a specific niche? Maybe PC cooling, maybe RAM tuning. Maybe you've actually just gotten into your games. Instead of upgrading your PC constantly, you're just playing games. That would be great to hear. Please share your stories over the past year in the do-it-yourself market. And as always, I'm Ari from the Tech Buyers Guru, and I will catch you next time.